Okay, so I've got a little commentary here. This is me, Briant Sikorski, my value proposition, if you want to call it that. But more importantly, I think it shares with you that I was pretty much born into an atypical American family located in a small suburb outside of Detroit, Michigan. And while I didn't see us as being wealthy, we weren't really hungry either. And that really significantly changed when, as a teenager, my father passed away very unexpectedly at the age of only 49, leaving me, my mother, and my three siblings pretty much uncertain about our future. And so while we made it, our lives could have been much improved had our parents planned for the unexpected. And today, as an independent wealth advisor, my passion is to ensure that my clients and their families never have to go through what I did. So I specialize in helping individuals, corporate executives, and business owners at their peak earnings years, planning for the unexpected while transitioning from portfolio accumulation to distribution phases. And I follow a financial planning, investment management, and wealth management process, giving them the peace of mind knowing that they'll never run out of money. So I bring over 20 years of experience, both as an accredited asset management specialist and a chartered retirement planning specialist. And I hold master degree in business administration. So enough of tooting my horn there. We're going to get into the topic, and I will start our presentation here. There we go. You always worry when you press that button, is this going to work? So thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate you just taking the time to take a look through this. Today, I want to share some financial planning strategies that are really designed to give you more financial security, especially during retirement. And we'll be focusing on some of the financial priorities and needs that are common among middle-aged workers, which typically involves those who are, say, between the age of 45 and 65. And so the time frame that we're focusing is from now until retirement. So, and before I forget, if you hang in with me till the end, I'll mention this a little bit later too, but I will be sure to provide you for lack of a better word, a white paper that LPL Financial, which is considered my quote broker dealer, has put together on a type of investment that a lot of people really don't know about, but is becoming available more to the general public, whereas before it was really only exclusive to very high net worth individuals. So our focus today will be strategies for building retirement savings so you can feel more confident about your financial security after you leave the workplace. You may have had other financial goals, and the tools we discuss should help you prepare for those as well. And we're speaking on recommendations for estate planning too. We're going to take a look at that kind of a little bit towards the end here. So for most of us, preparing for retirement is our biggest financial challenge, particularly as we see recently with costs rising for housing, healthcare, groceries, pretty much everything. Something else is also increasing, and that's our lifespan. So people are enjoying more active lifestyles during retirement, and that's contributing to longer lives. You think back just a generation of my parents, while my dad died, prematurely young, I guess you might say. They were really, he was worked at Ford Motor Company, and his objective was he got the job after coming back, made it back alive from World War II, got a job at Ford Motor Company, was going to work there 25 years, get his gold watch, buy a couple CDs and move to Florida. I don't know, but move out to a lake someplace, I think. Well, think about that today. I've also have another client today who's 95 years old. He's been retired since age 55. he's 40 years in retirement, and that's longer than he worked. So we've got some challenges here about, with if our sole source of income is from Social Security, or very few companies have pensions anymore. We're being thrust into the situation of having to be more responsible for our own outcome, our own retirement, than most definitely than was done just a generation ago. So it's not always easy to know if you're saving enough for retirement. We can't predict what challenges might be coming to us personally, or what might happen to the markets in the upcoming months and years. Who would have thought that just, a year ago, maybe a year and a couple of months, we had one of the most robust economies, low gas prices, high availability of product, full shelf grocery stores. And while, I'm sure that COVID had a role to play, and maybe so did Ukraine, but there's been some policies that have been implemented that have really caused some discomfort to Americans. So this is kind of interesting if you think about this, that there's an Employee Benefit Research Institute which does a retirement confidence survey every year, asking respondents how much they have in savings and retirement. So not including the value of their home, 35% said they had less than $25,000, including 18% who said they had less than $1,000. 6% reported totals of $25,000 to $45,000. 12% reported totals of $50,000 to $99,000. 17 reported totals of $100,000 to $249,000, and only 30% had $250,000 or more. So if you take a look at this graph, which shares their confidence levels about their retirement preparations, the top line shows that nearly 70% of the workers who responded said they feel very or somewhat confident they will have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. As you can see, their confidence has been rising since 2017 after taking a slight dip. So the bottom line shows that the number of those who feel very confident is also increasing, reaching 24% in March 2020 after dipping to only 17% in 2018. So you've probably heard the phrase that it's better to have too much than too little, which is my wife's travel packing belief and philosophy. You should err on the side of caution. You might want to keep this in mind while you're planning your savings goal, both today and the future. So the first thing to consider is, when are you going to retire? Our previous survey reported that 71% of workers said they expect to work for pay after they're retired. I mentioned this just to give you a heads up that you might want to use a conservative estimate about your retirement age. The next estimate you need to make is what income you'll need to cover your annual expenses. Most experts agree that your annual expenses your annual retirement income should be between 60 and 80% of the salary you made during your final working year. So if your final year's salary was $100,000, you should plan to have an annual income during retirement of at least $60,000 to $80,000. Now that may not be enough, though, if you're planning to use your free time in retirement for traveling, buying a boat, fishing, and pursuing hobbies with costs that can quickly add up. On the other hand, you might be able to lower this a bit if you're planning to scale back on expenses or continue working on a part-time basis. Next, you'll need to estimate your Social Security and pension benefits. The information on this chart shows examples of different benefits based on income and age of retirement. Things to consider: you can start receiving Social Security retirement benefits as early as age 62, but your benefits are decreased by about 0.5% for each month you start receiving benefits before your full retirement age. And your full retirement age depends on the year you were born. If you were born before 1955, your full retirement age is 66. If you were born after 1959, your full retirement age is 67. If you delay retiring and receiving benefits beyond your full retirement age up until age 70, you'll receive credits that increase your monthly benefits. So the total benefits you receive depend on those calculations along with your earnings history. The maximum monthly Social Security benefit anyone can earn as of 2020 is $3,790. And that's for someone who files at age 70. Even if you wait until 70, your benefits probably won't replace completely your pre-retirement income. For someone who worked their entire adult life at average earnings and retired in 2019 at age 65, their Social Security benefits replace only about 38% of their past earnings. Now, if you remember what you paid for your first candy bar or your first car and what that equipment cost is today, you'll know what I'm talking about when I bring up the subject of inflation. The inflation rate is measured by the Consumer Price Index and reflects the rising cost of goods and services. Between June 2019 and June 2020, the Consumer Price Index increased only 0.6%. Now, the highest rate we've ever experienced in the entire 21st century was a 3.8% annual average in 2008. The last time we had double-digit inflation was in the 1980s, and it averaged around 13.5% in 1980 and in 1981 before dropping back to 6.2% in 1982. Now I remember telling you like stories. Hey, I remember I bought a house in Michigan in 1981 and I got a 10% mortgage and thought I was the luckiest man in the world. And I probably was, because less than a year later, a neighbor across the street bought a house and his interest rate was 16%. So his mortgage payment was over double what mine was. So with a wide range of inflation averages, it's not easy to estimate how we and our savings will be impacted by inflation in the years ahead. So for the purposes of this chart, we've assumed a 3% inflation rate. And this shows how your goals calculated in today's dollars may increase over the next 20 years. Now, one other phrase we hear is that of better late than never. And we just saw how inflation can impact your savings goals over time. Now we're going to look at how time can help you. With compound returns, you can help your savings grow and may even be able to surpass your goals. Now, while this chart is hypothetical, it shows results created with an online calculator available at investor.gov, which you may want to check out. It shows the results based on a constant 5% annual return of investing regular amounts over a 20-year period. Now, of course, actual investment returns will vary, but this demonstrates the potential power compounding can have on your investments. So as you work on your retirement nest egg, make sure you've considered all the tools that offer tax advantages, which can help your retirement savings grow even faster. These qualified retirement accounts include individual retirement accounts or IRAs, Roth IRAs, and company-sponsored retirement plans. The annual limit for contributions to traditional or Roth IRA plans is $19,000 in 2020. The maximum you can contribute in 2020 to an IRA is $6,000. So you can see an IRA only gives you 6,000, whereas a traditional or Roth 401k, which is a company sponsored plan, allows you to contribute on a tax deductible basis 19,500. And you can, anybody who has any kind of business with income that you're going to report can pretty much do any one of these types of 401k or other quote company sponsored plans. Now, if you're 50 or older, you may also be able to make additional, what they call catch-up contributions to your IRAs and employer-sponsored plans. So for 2020, the catch-up contribution is $6,500 for employer-sponsored plans and $1,000 for an IRA. Now, this chart gives a quick glimpse into the benefits of putting investments into a tax-deferred account. Now, imagine you're in the 25% tax bracket and you've opened a 401k with a maximum yearly contribution of $19,500. Over the next 20 years, you contribute $1,200, the equivalent of about $100 a month, into the account. Your actual contributions total $43,500 over that 20-year span. But at the end of that period, you've accumulated $109,330 or $92,873 after taxes. So compare that to the $86,368 you would have earned in a taxable savings account. Now imagine that you invested more, maybe $19,500 a year instead of $1,200, excuse me. And how much more could you have earned on that investment? With a traditional IRA or company-sponsored retirement plan, your investment earnings aren't taxed until you withdraw them. So for most people, that withdrawal comes after they've retired or hypothetically in a lower tax bracket. Withdrawals from Roth IRA plans are tax-free if you're over the age of 59 and a half and have held that account for 5 years or more. If you make withdrawals from other qualified retirement accounts before you reach 59 and a half, you may be required to pay an additional 10% in federal tax. Now, this assumes the chart is made up of the information gathered from the previously mentioned calculator tool. Once you've got a good idea how much you need to save for retirement, you'll need to decide how to invest your savings to meet your goals. To make the right choices, you'll need to understand the different types of asset classes and weigh the potential risks and rewards they pose. So we'll take a look at these characteristics in the next few slides, along with some sample portfolios that may help you decide which asset classes are right for you. And like I shared with you earlier, I'm going to give you some information on another asset class that is not well known by many people. So there's a lot of investments out there: stocks and stock mutual funds, corporate and mutual bonds, bond funds, life cycle funds, exchange traded funds, money market funds, and US Treasuries. So these options really boil down to about three basic categories: stocks, bonds, and cash. These three asset classes come with different levels of risks and returns and react differently in various circumstances and timeframes. In other words, market conditions that cause one asset category to do well often cause another category to do poorly or to have just at best average returns. Historically, the returns of these three asset classes have not moved up or down at the same time. So if one is up, hypothetically, the other is down. The way you divide your portfolio between these choices makes up your asset allocation. So let's talk about different asset categories. Simply put, a stock represents ownership in a company. A bond is basically an IOU that a borrower, such as a government organization or corporation, gives to an investor, promising interest payments and future repayment of the loan. Cash securities are short-term investments such as treasury bills, which can be converted readily into cash, which is why they're sometimes called cash equivalents. Now let's look more closely at each type of investment and refer to this chart, which provides context for how different categories performed between 1926 and 2015. This is what we refer to as the IBD chart, named for researcher, author, and university professor Roger Ibbotson. As an FYI, the initial investment for each of these investments in 1926 was a hypothetical $1. The green line tagged here as treasury bills is helpful in representing the cash and cash equivalents category, including money markets. You'll see that the initial $1 investment had a compound annual rate of return of 3.4% and is worth $21 after 89 years. It barely edged out inflation, which averaged 2.9%. Because it offers the least risk and the lowest rate of return, it may be most appropriate for short-term goals or emergency savings. Let's look at the orange line, which represents government bonds. The $1 investment here increased to $132 or 5.6% compounded annual return over 89 years. What's interesting about these green and orange lines is that neither one of them goes into negative territory, even after the major stock crash that helped launch the Great Depression. So I'm speculating a bit here, but I think it's safe to say the orange line would have shown a better compounded annual return if corporate bonds had been included. Bonds produced an annualized return of 8.1% over the 30-year period ending December 31st, 2018. And this compares to 9.97% for stocks during the same period as measured by the S&P 500. Bonds as an asset class pose less risk than stocks and also offer a wide range of risk return potential, ranging from the safest government-backed securities to high-risk junk bonds. Now, if we look at the black and blue lines, which spent a lot of time in negative territory during the Depression, the blue line, or large stocks, showed an annual return of 10%, turning $1 into $5,390. Small stocks, the dark blue line, had a compound annual return of 12% during the 89-year span, and it would have turned this $1 investment into over $26,000. Now, this chart demonstrates what we talked about earlier, that inflation can hit us hard over time. And the chart shows the impact of a 3% inflation rate on $1,000 over 40 years, reducing its purchasing power by 80% to $200. So the further you're away from retirement, the more inflation can cut away at the purchasing power of your money. This underscores the importance of choosing the right investment to help you stay ahead of inflation. Now, if you're 20 years away from retirement, you may want to consider a more aggressive investment strategy, such as this one for your retirement savings. The sample portfolio here shows a more aggressive, higher risk allocation to aggressively pursue potential growth. The 75% devoted to stocks may represent a range of different investment styles and approaches to help reduce that risk. Some different approaches on stock investments include focusing on value or growth, and a value approach looks for stocks that are considered bargains because they may have fallen or have been overlooked by investors. A growth approach to investing in stocks focuses on companies that are rapidly growing their earnings, perhaps more quickly than their competitors. Including stock investments from companies of different sizes is also a popular investment strategy. Smaller company stocks are known as small caps, and medium-sized companies are known as mid caps. By including some of each, investors may provide more balance to their portfolio return. Now, this portfolio is considered to be an aggressive risk, higher risk portfolio, and the risk tolerance may depend a lot on your timeline. 20 years gives you some time to ride out any short-term fluctuations. You may need to keep in mind, though, that holding a particular stock for 20 years comes with no guarantees. You may still lose money. If you need your money in only 5 to 10 years, you may want to be more moderate in your investments and your risks. A lot of investors choose bonds and money market instruments for shorter term goals with more moderate investment in stocks. The moderate growth portfolio included shows a 57% investment in stocks. That allocation is considered to outpace inflation and help pursue growth. It also includes bonds, cash, and Treasury inflation protected securities, or TIPS, which are US Treasury bonds that provide a hedge against inflation. Now, if your retirement is right around the corner, meaning in the next few years, you may prefer a more conservative strategy for your investments. So as you can see, this example of conservative portfolio still includes an allocation of stocks, and this is designed to help maintain its growth potential while still minimizing the risk with the rest of the allocations. The reason for this is the length of your retirement, maybe 20 years or more. So it's important to keep growth considerations, growth investments in your portfolio even after you retire. So now that you've got all these pieces in place and you've established how your assets should be allocated, you'll need to review it regularly, at least once a year, to make sure you're on track to meet your goals. You may see your investments gain or lose value, which could require you to rebalance how your assets are allocated. For example, market conditions could cause stocks to outpace bonds for several years in a row, creating a large percentage of your investments in stocks rather than you had planned. And personal circumstances can also impact your financial situation. You may need to adjust your target asset allocation accordingly. You may become more comfortable with more aggressive allocation as your income rises. So if you think you'd be more comfortable making some of these decisions with the guidance of a financial professional, you shouldn't hesitate to ask for it. They can help you evaluate your asset allocation strategy and select investments to help you meet your retirement goals. When the time comes to change jobs or retire, you've got some decisions to make. Many companies will let you stay invested in their 401k plan indefinitely if you keep a balance of at least $5,000 in the account. If you're starting a new job that offers a 401k, you may have the option to transfer the balance from your old job and consolidate it with your new one without taking a tax hit. This will keep your funds growing in one place, making it easier to manage them over time. Another option you may want to consider, whether you're retiring or moving to a new job, is transferring your savings from your former employer's plan into your own rollover IRA. Moving your money from your old 401k into your rollover IRA keeps it tax deferred for retirement. If you don't choose a direct rollover into the IRA, you may end up having to pay a mandatory 20% withholding on the account balance because of tax regulations. If you'd rather roll all your assets into a Roth IRA, you'll pay taxes on the amount that was converted to the Roth IRA, but you'll be able to make subsequent tax-free withdrawals for the Roth IRA as long as you're have held the account for 5 years and are 59.5 years or older. Taking a lump sum distribution or cashing out your whole 401k is an option you should weigh carefully first. Many experts advise against it. If you take a distribution before you reach age 59.5, you'll owe federal tax on those funds plus applicable state and local taxes. In addition, you'll also have to pay a 10% penalty for early withdrawals unless you meet certain conditions. Now, we've been focusing on retirement, but other financial goals may also be weighing on your mind. If you're a parent, your kid's college may be another financial target you're focusing on. Now, as much as you want to help, remember this: don't jeopardize your retirement savings to pay for their college costs. They may have other alternatives available, such as student loans, student aid and student loans. Typically, your retirement savings are not included in the calculations made to determine who qualifies for financial aid. Another common goal for people at retirement or near retirement is wanting to help out elderly family members. And sometimes that's by providing care options, such as moving them into our homes, and sometimes that's by providing financial support. Many caregivers are women, and they miss out on future Social Security and pension benefits by taking time off or accepting more flexible but lower paying positions to help care for others. An estimated 53 million Americans served as unpaid caregivers to a friend or family member in early 2020, excuse me. That's 21% of all Americans, more than 1 in 5, and a significant increase over the estimated 43 million or 18% caregivers in 2015. The average caregiver's wage was about 49 years, and 61% of them were women. They provided care to either a child with special needs or an adult, and more than 41 million of them, 17%, were caring for someone age 50 or older. As the baby boom generation ages, these numbers will likely rise. While caregivers are extremely valued and appreciated from an emotional standpoint, they suffer from long-term economic losses because of lost job opportunities, reduced work schedules, out-of-pocket expenses, and lost retirement benefits from Social Security and pensions. These can add up and can take a significant toll over the caregiver's lifetime. They have less money to save and invest. If this describes you or somebody you know, you should do some research to see what support might be available from local community resources, as well as state and national associations. You may also want to check out long-term care insurance policies that may help cover some of the long-term care expenses. So now I hope everyone here has already created or at least considered their estate plan. If you haven't, though, know you're not alone. A 2020 estate planning study found that the number of adult Americans who had a will or other estate planning document decreased by 25% between 2012 and 2020. I have no idea why that went down that far. So a will is a key portion of an estate plan, but there's much more to consider. Estate planning provides all the decisions, documents, and other essentials to enact your wishes regarding your financial assets, property, health, care, and more. And it may even be applicable if you're still living but incapacitated. It typically includes your will, plans for charitable giving, creation of trust, and insurance policies. The increasing number of adults without a will might have something in common. They may think their assets are not substantial enough to warrant a will. But please don't make that mistake. Everyone needs a will. If you die without one, the court will decide who gets what. The process known as probate can be very long and expensive. And during that time, any dependents or survivors will not have access to those assets. If you have minor children, your will can designate who will serve as their guardian and care for them after your death. While there are some online options for creating a will, you should keep in mind that a will is governed by state law and that you benefit by using a legal professional who knows the laws in the state in which you are drafting your will. You may also want to consider creating a trust to provide funds for future generations or minor dependents. A qualified financial professional can help you determine what type of trust might be the best option for your situation. And the last estate planning option I'll mention here is insurance policies. These can provide income for a surviving spouse and replace wealth paid towards estate taxes. So I mentioned earlier that my dad passed away when he was 49. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I was a teenager. I had a brother and two sisters. And when my dad died, he died pretty quickly. And we had no idea if we had a mortgage, checking account, life insurance, what? Dad handled all that. It was in his desk downstairs. We had no idea it was in that desk, but we never went in it. And it took us months, if not years, to find these little policies of some sort, or bank accounts or CDs or whatever that he formed when maybe there was a special, or maybe he got a toaster, I don't know what. So someone's got to know where to find these things and execute them. Now, if you've accumulated substantial assets or are inheriting any, you may be impacted by some past and some future changes to the federal estate tax. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 increased the federal estate tax exemption to 11.8 million or 22.36 million for married couples. This provision went into effect in 2018, but will go away in 2026 unless it's extended or made permanent. If there's no action, the estate tax exemption amount will revert in 2026 to its former level of only $5 million. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I'd like to close by summarizing what I consider to be the most important points. And then I'm going to share with you this other asset class that you might be interested in. First, do all you can to increase your chances of having a comfortable retirement. Establish a savings account to meet your timeline and take advantage of all the options you have to contribute to tax-deferred retirement accounts. If possible, try to contribute the maximum allowed. Choose a mix of investments that can potentially reduce your risks and help you pursue growth. Include stocks or other investments in your asset allocation that can help your portfolio outpace inflation. If you're over the age of 50, do all you can to make catch-up contributions so you can increase your potential for benefiting from additional tax-deferred growth. Review your asset allocations regularly to make sure you're still on track to meet your goals. And as you get closer to retiring, you may need to adjust your target asset allocation. So that sums this content up for just a moment. And then I'm going to switch over here for you